All right. So we're live on a lot of different channels right now. True DFS channel, the PayDirt channel, the PayDirt Twitter, which is James's Twitter, and then my personal YouTube channel, which hasn't seen the light of day for a DFS video in quite a long time, in a couple of years. Just because we want to get this out on as many channels as possible. You know, obviously for those who may or may not know, True DFS merged with PayDirt at the beginning of February, and True DFS as a website and company, you know, will cease to exist at the end of February. So because we merged, and James wanted, you know, Sheets, Bobby, myself to be, you know, continue with the merger and stuff. So I'm still here, and I still have stake in the company, and I'm still here for the long haul. I'm just under, we're under PayDirt now because we merged together. For those who aren't aware of that, that's why it's going out to so many different channels. So people can, at least somewhat be notified of that. In the description, you do see the code if you want to, if you want to have 50% off your first month of PayDirt for those True DFS subscribers who, still had a subscription going through February. You not only have, True DFS until the end of the month, plus the Saber Sim and all that stuff. You can also get a free month of PayDirt if you go into the PayDirt Discord, and I'll go ahead and give you a free code, just because that's only just for actually back it up. If you're in the True DFS Discord, you see a free code to get a free month of PayDirt, just because you just happen to be a part of it when the merger went through. Anyway, we're going through the duels today. I want to be able to watch all the on-track activity. That's why we're doing this at 3, and we have truck practice and stuff in an hour. You're not going to see anything on the screen, just because everything we have in terms of the data, in terms of what I've been working on, is behind the paywall at PayDirt, obviously. But we can, go in and just talk about, the duels and the approach and the people that I like, or whatever. So when we're looking at, and also I have StreamYard open on this side, so if we see any comments or anything, I will adjust accordingly and stuff. When we're looking at, so I wanted to make a video last night, and I just decided to save it for today. Let's do my thoughts just really fast on these dual races and stuff. When we look at the fact that we're back to a full season points, I think, and the fact that we give out points in the duels now. We've never done a full season, or I mean, the chase, whatever, right? But like, points actually matter. So we've never been in dual races to where you could get those points and have it actually matter. And so I think we're going to see more people, at least, like, race, certainly the good teams and stuff. We had already seen last year with pole sitters leading a good portion of the races. Obviously, Briscoe pulled off because he was overheating, but he led laps in that one. Austin Cindric won his dual race last year. And so when we're looking at the aggressiveness of the pole sitters, it's not, I don't think it's like it used to be, to where you automatically get the pole for the 500 and you're just going to, jump all the way back and just kind of ride. Now, let me make sure, for duel 1, I'm actually, let me look at my exposures really fast, because I'm doing 44 lines in total for each duel. I did 33 just based off of the data, no input at all, and then I hand built 12. So I want to see the exposure rates of my pole sitters here. And this is one where I will give where I'm out of way. So duel 1 is Kyle Busch. How much Kyle Busch do I have? I don't think I have a lot. I have 9% Kyle Busch right now. For duel 2, I want to go ahead and look and see. That's Chase Briscoe. And I have about 16% of Briscoe in the 2 duels. So obviously I'm pretty underweight on the pole sitters, but yet again, I'm just talking through kind of my thoughts here, and I think there's a likelihood that these guys do end up trying to stay up front, specifically in duel number 2 with Briscoe. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. Secondly, the Spire guys and the guys who decide to not take any practice at all, that's like the dumbest decision of my lifetime to ever witness. I mean, McDowell specifically is basically just pulling an Amelia from Hendrick. If you guys aren't familiar, that was the car that Dale Earnhardt Jr. drove on a lot of the plate races that they named Amelia. And that's back when Hendrick was just like, we're not doing pack practice, we're not doing any of that, we're just doing single car runs. And what happened? Those idiots kept spinning up out of 4. Junior did it, Johnson did it, Elliott did it. I mean, we've seen that opting to just not take advantage of the practice time given to you is like one of the dumbest decisions that you could do. Um, and then what did McDowell do? Like, oh, we know exactly where, like, we know where the setup needs to be, and they queue like fucking 20-second, in overall speed. Like, what a joke, right? Um, so I am concerned, in the dual race for the people who just didn't have any on track time. Like, I don't know why you just wouldn't at least hop on the track and do like 2 or 3 laps. I just don't understand that. Like, teach their own. And then when we're looking at these dual races, now in both races, in the first duel, we have Bubba Wallace and Chastain as your main guys in the back. And then in duel 2, we have Stenhouse and Reddick. There's a real chance that both of these two individual drivers on both slates end up being your highest owned driver. But we really don't have uh we really don't have a whole lot of good cars in the back of either of these duels. Like, we look at duel 1, right? And from 16 on back, you have Wallace, AJ, Chastain, SVG, Suarez, Chandler Smith, Mears, and Gregson. Okay, so like the only true, like, real place differential guys who you would realistically, now if you're using any of the PayDirt tools we've talked about, you can see my percentages of where they should in line with a top 5 finish, a top 10, so on and so forth. And that's one thing that I really wanted to nail going over to PayDirt. I'm very, very happy with where everything is sitting today for this race. It's really just Wallace and Chastain from this first race, and then obviously probably your secondary targets are like for like place differential. Obviously AJ, Suarez. But really, like, the main draw of duel 1 is like the guys starting in the middle of the pack. Obviously, your more expensive guys, but like Blaney, obviously Byron, right? Potentially Keselowski. I am kind of conservative with my own exposure to Keselowski just because he's coming off his injury and he's literally walking around with a cane and yipping and yapping about how that's his worst pain that he's ever experienced. Normally he'd be like, I'm. Well, I mean, this will be the last little tell I have, because I've already built everything. So let me see. I have 10% Keselowski in duel 1, just because of his injury. I think if there's any situation that you'd want to take it easy from a driver perspective in this is Keselowski. Now the off or the main argument from this main duel, and the reason why I'm going from the back of the field talking about place differential of where the ownership is going to be, and then Blaine and Byron, is that we have a ton of Fords who are absolutely going to be fighting and contending to lead this duel. We have several drivers who just do that naturally, specifically Buescher, Joey Logano, Ryan Preece. Now I bring Keselowski back in there because when these duels go green, we typically see, obviously the Chevys are going to go on their own, the Fords are going to go on their own, and then it's going to depend on when or whoever short pits first, and who's able to carry the momentum as the second group comes out of pit lane on the apron, and they pass them down the back straightaway. And so if that's the case, I'm probably making a pretty rough decision being so low on Keselowski, because he's probably going to stay with the Fords through all of the pit cycles and stuff. But from a build perspective, we're going to see a ton of ownership on Wallace, Chastain, Blaney, and Byron, right? So what do we do from those guys, right? I think based on how kind of spread out the good drivers are in this individual duel, I think you probably take lesser shots on Wallace and Chastain, and you absolutely try and make sure you're swapping in and getting some Daniel Suarez, some Noah Gragson, some AJ Allmendinger. Like, those clearly seem like the clear pivots or additions to those place differential guys. Yet again, I'm playing 44 lines in both races. Probably 90 or 100 or so in Xfinity and truck, and then we're gonna see how much money I got left over for Sunday in case I just burn through everything. But because of that, and trusting my you know my data, plus my hand building stuff, I'm probably gonna have two pretty drastic approaches of some lineups being obviously very place differential heavy, and then other ones probably leaning heavy into the Fords and specifically people like Logano and Busher. And in fact, I had Logano and Busher popping up in a lot of my stuff, right? And if this race goes green, I think realistically the only people who would make headway would be the chalk guys in the back. Blaney, Byron, Wallace, and Chastain, right? Like we look at Bubba, he's won his dual races from the back before. Chastain has come from the back to finish well. In duel number 2, we have, Reddick in the backfield, who has literally come from like 17th and 16th before to finish well. The 2311 guys almost never qualify decently for Daytona 500 pole qualifying, and so they pretty much always start in the second half of the field. And so I think they're going to work in most, if not, most scenarios where this race goes green, outside of if they speed down pit lane during their green flag pit stop. So with that said, I think playing the Fords plus, the four chalk guys and intermixing the Ford guys up in the front of the field from 10th forward, mixing them with Blaney, Byron, Wallace, and Chastain is probably going to be the primary way that I build, or at least from what I'm seeing in my lineups, and then probably doing the same thing, and then swapping, getting, if I'm building a lineup and I've used Chastain and Wallace and like 6 together, obviously taking Wallace off and putting AJ in there, or taking Chastain off and putting Gregson in there, or Suarez in there. I think those are your main focuses on here, just because we don't really have a lot of true manufacturer stuff to really worry about in this back half of the field. All of it's in the front. All the Ford guys who want to be up front are or primarily going to stick together up front are already up front. And when we look at the salary for these guys, you also have Bowman at 78, which I with based on where these guys are starting, everybody up here, if they finish anywhere close to where they start, they're going to hit a 5x value. Like Bowman should score over 40 points. Busher should score over 40 points. Logano should score over 40 points. That's roughly around a 5x for these guys here. Dylan, LaJoy, Nemechek. Or let's back it up with LaJoy. Obviously, another RFK car. What manufacturer is he with? What team is he with? Priest, the Fords, Priest, Busher, Keselowski. Literally, those 3 guys alone are gonna be carrying LaJoy through pit stops, and I would assume through the top half of the field in this event. I just don't really see a reason why they would drop back. If anything, Chandler Smith is the one who's going to have to be up there and racing LaJoy. I just don't see a realistic way where LaJoy is like riding 18th at any point in this race. I think he stays with the Fords through a majority of this. I mean, we typically see him run up front in these plate races anyway. So when we're looking at pivots and stuff, like I think LaJoy is very live to have a chalk lineup and then throw LaJoy in there. Same thing with Nemechek. I'm not really concerned about that. First comment of the streams between the 36 people watching right now on a Thursday at 3:00, still learning about NASCAR. Could you explain what the dual race is and its significance to this whole event? Now, normally, and yes, I will do that. Normally, I don't like answering really basic questions, but I'm with a new company, people who don't know who I am. stuff like that. So I'll go ahead and answer this. So NASCAR is a sport to where they do a lot of convoluted things. So yesterday they qualified for the starting positions for this race. Okay. The two fastest cars of those, or the two fastest cars that qualified for these races yesterday, also qualify first and second for the races on Sunday. Okay. The rest of the Sunday starting grid is ordered by how people finish in these two individual races. So Duel 1 sets the inside lane for the 500 on Sunday. So you have the fastest overall car on Wednesday is starting first on Sunday. The car who finishes first in this race would then start third on Sunday. The car who finishes second in this race would then start fifth. And then, if you're the guy who locked up the pole position finishes anywhere, then everybody just moves down. And then duel number 2, the second race tonight, orders the outside lane for Sunday. So the driver who starts 4th, 6th, 8th, 10th, 12th, 14th, so on and so forth, are the people who finish 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th in the second race today. Why do we do that? Well, because back in the day, you'd have like 60 cars trying to make the Sunday race. Now that these guys are racing Lamborghinis, there's only 45 cars. So I'm gonna be honest, I don't really understand the purpose of keeping this dumbass event alive, but here we are. These guys are not racing for literally anything. This is a glorified practice session. There's 3 people who are fighting to make the 41 car field in this race. That is Corey LaJoie, that is Casey Mears, and that is Chandler Smith. Casey Mears is literally driving a 1943 Ford Coupe. He has no chance in hell to even compete in this event. Chandler Smith and LaJoie, they have whoever finishes in front of each other in that one makes the event on Sunday. That's what the purpose of this race is. And then in duel number 2, it's people who aren't qualified in. Anyway, that's why these races are here. NASCAR's dumb. NASCAR's stupid. Don't be a fan of this stupid sport. Only watch it to make money. Like if you become a diehard fan of this sport, you will want to off yourself with like bleach on like a weekly basis. So Duel 2, now yet again, for years, because I've been doing this for almost 8-9 years at this point, I typically always had stuff on the screen. First off, there's no practice data to analyze, so we're not analyzing anything like that on screen. Secondly, anything in terms of projections, ownership, builds, pivots, all that is on PayDirt is behind the paywall. It's not going to be on the stream. So I'm just verbally talking through these races. As we move to Duel 2, this duel is much more interesting from a build perspective. I'm finding myself leaving a ton of salary on this race because pricing is very soft, and what I think is that the performance curve of this event for all the drivers is much more evenly distributed than in duel number 2. Okay. So same thing with the Fords at duel number 1. You have a ton of Toyotas in this event. Okay. I would expect their finishes, the Toyota drivers. Who are the Toyota drivers, you might ask? I mean, sure, I guess I could baby everybody through it. The Toyota drivers in this event, in this race, are the Joe Gibbs drivers in the 2311 team: Chase Briscoe, Hamlin, Ty Gibbs, Bell, Riley Herbst, and Tyler Reddick. Okay, these guys are all very accustomed to running in a group at Daytona. They are in cars that are very fast, and I would imagine that they all ride together for the most part in this event. Okay, so you have the Toyota guys in this event going directly against the RCR and Chevy alliance, or not RCR, the ECR engines and the Hendrick Chevys, right? So Larson, Elliott, Zane Smith, McDowell, Connor Zilich, all of the Chevy guys here. Okay, so because these are like the two classes that most people are going to fall into from an aggressive perspective, from a pit perspective, from a running teammate perspective and stuff. I think this is a race to where, yes, obviously Tyler Reddick and Stenhouse are the best place differential plays. I think Stenhouse is very live to. I think his range of outcome is pretty big. I mean, there's a real chance that if he gets blocked off or whatever from the top 8 at the end, I think he rides. But I think Reddick, due to his track history, due to how the Toyotas typically race in the duels, and the fact that he's come from the back multiple times in dual races before, I think he's the best play in the slate. Um, but unlike duel number 1, where we have Blaney, Byron, um, and those guys who are also going to carry ownership, this one I'm much more open to being spread out on. Because there's really no lean towards like who's a better play between guys starting 11th through 18th. Between Zilich, Jones, Barry, Hocevar, Riley, Herbst, Gill, and Alfredo. I mean, we're probably not playing. I'm not playing a lot of Alfredo, but I think the outcomes of Zilich, Jones, Barry, Hocevar, Gill, and Ty Dillon, I think they are all equally able to finish in any position. So I'm pretty even across the board on those guys. I like the idea of playing those guys. The fact that we get Bell at a really, really cheap price tag, the fact that we can get an Elliott at a really cheap price tag makes a lot of sense. We then look at, teammates. We then look at how I think, Riley Herbst and Reddick are going to be strongly correlated together. I would imagine those two run together the majority of the race. So if Reddick is finishing well, Herbst is probably going to finish well. If Reddick and Herbst are finishing well, who's finishing well in this event? Probably the Toyotas. So there's a real chance that Gibbs and Bell can pay off their price tag by just staying in the top 5 all day and bringing up the rest of the Toyotas. It's very similar with the Fords. Like I think Larson's a really terrible play at plate races because he typically wrecks out. There's really no reason for him to be crashing out in this event. I would imagine him, Elliott, stay in the top 10 all day. I would imagine that we see McDowell and Hocevar, ride with the Hinder guys and fight for a top 10 all day. I just think the outcomes for duel number 2 specifically is probably more spread out than normal. Anyway, the reason I'm bringing that up is, unlike duel 1, where I'm not leaving a ton of salary on the table, I'm leaving. I mean, again, I have 44 lines. I'm leaving anywhere from 200 to several $1,000s on the table for this duel, just because I think a lot of people are live to compete for a top 10 in this event. I have no idea what that term is, Alexander. And just because I don't know terms on the internet, I usually never say them out loud because I could be saying some derogatory term in like Taiwanese, and I'm just unaware of it. So I don't know what that term means, Alexander. But yeah, I mean, and then same thing with talking about the pole sitter here. I think Briscoe is live to lead laps in this race, and honestly, my favorites to lead laps in this race are probably Briscoe, Hamlin, Bell, or Gibbs. I think Toyota is really going to try and control this dual race, and I think that keeps Briscoe very much in contention. And I don't think he's going to back out unless they're getting like incredibly stupid towards the end of the race. Same thing, or along the same lines that I mentioned with Keselowski, being in pain or whatever. Hamlin is literally in his own hell for the last like 4 months. His mental fortitude is completely shell shock, right? So in NASCAR, losing the championship, your cancer-ridden father burns alive or burns to death in your house, or in your parents' house, right? Like, I mean, this guy has literally been in like the worst offseason imaginable. I think that is going to get to him, and I think he's going to slip up at some point during this weekend, and like I took for the start of the season. Um, I just don't think I just don't think Hamlin is mentally there right now. Um, that's like my other, I guess stance or take or kind of decision there. So I'm just probably not going to be heavy on Hamlin in this, despite the fact that I think the Toyotas are going to be up there. Well, let me look. Let me check my exposure. We'll get a fourth exposure check on a driver here. So duel number 2, how much Hamlin do I have here? I have 23% Hamlin. So that is me having very little faith in uh in what Hamlin is able to do here. Yeah, I have no clue what I don't watch I don't watch wrestling. Somehow that just skipped my childhood, and I just never got into wrestling. Eagles, happy to see you. Best of luck this year as well, and good luck. Thanks for always being here throughout the years. I mean, I think that's mainly it for this. I don't have any at the moment. I don't have any JJ Yelly at the moment. BJ McLeod was tough just because he's gonna be very aggressive between him and Alfredo, but I think Alfredo runs up like we've seen a lot of changes in how some of these guys run up front on like regular plate races, right? We see Alfredo up front a lot. We see Cody Ware in running positions inside the top 10, which is just incredibly stressful to deal with. But I don't think, unless pit stops cycle out for this, I just don't think Alfredo really cracks into the top 8. I think for whatever reason, Alfredo's kind of going to be, sandwiched between 13th and 20th all day. I think that's going to keep BJ very much close to him. But I don't think either one of Alfredo or BJ McLeod are viable today. Like I would much rather take just the lower owned Zane Smith, McDowell, Jones, Barry over really get into Alfredo or BJ McLeod. Like that just seems like unnecessarily risky. Any rules you would recommend in Portfolio Manager for Duel 1 and Duel 2? That is a question for James. I have not used that tool, especially for NASCAR. I've messed with it a little bit for NFL. I've never used it for NASCAR. With that said, I never make any rules for NASCAR, whether it was SaberSim, which I'm still using, because I still have it, right? I don't make any rules for that at all. Yet again, maybe you weren't here when I started. I'm running 44 lineups in both these races and just entering those in like every contest that I can, pretty much. Outside of the 5, I think the 5 is a pretty ugly contest today. 33 of those are my data, ran raw. I don't even fucking look at it. I took that, played it. Last 12 lineups are ones that I hand built. But I don't run any rules. I think one of the worst things you can do in DFS is if you have a process or tools or whatever you're using that you believe in, and then you go in there and start making rules and messing things up, especially if you have no clue about the sport. I think that's like one of the worst things you can do. Like, you're on the PayDirt stuff. My optimal lineups, the ones that perform the best based on what the data that I'm using to build my own lineups, are available on PayDirt. You can just see those there. Like I would highly recommend just looking at those. And if for whatever reason you want to make changes to it, you can use the pivot finder on the tab beside it to look at drivers that are similar to whatever driver you're considering taking out or building around. But for the time being, I have not messed with the PayDirt portfolio for NASCAR specifically, so I can't really help you there, Ryan. And yeah, I mean that's mainly it. Let me see. I got a DM on the cord. let's see what this is about. Nope, that is just actually just a DM from a friend of mine. So we'll respond to that later. I think that's mainly it, man. I don't really have anything else to say. I go on here and talk about my approach. Might seem cryptid or like whatever, right? But I'm literally looking at my lineups, kind of talking through what I'm doing. If you want the data that I'm using to build those, it's on PayDirt. Like I can't really be any more transparent than that. And yeah, I mean that's I think that's mainly it. Don't think I have anything else to say. Let me see if there's any other things. Now this is early. Normally there's more questions, but yet again, this is on a Thursday at like midday. So I doubt I'm gonna have any things there. If you guys have any questions, I mean, feel free to reach out on Twitter, or if you're in PayDirt, if you join the PayDirt Discord and you join the website, I will answer whatever question you have. This is a rare opportunity to ask any dumb question to me, and I will answer it straight faced and not make fun of you because I'm with a new company, right? Anywho, yeah, I think that's it. Good luck tonight, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for the truck race, which should be a banger. That's the King Kong 250. That's going to be a fun one. Anyways, yeah, see you guys later. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. See ya. Bye.